It turned out that my stepsister had stolen my fiancé, and now her marriage has broken up and my parents have disowned me. I am 27 years old and got married 2 weeks ago. I planned the whole wedding myself, and the guests were full of praise, thinking everything looked perfect. My stepsister, who is 26, couldn't stand it and kept telling everyone that I had stolen the ideas. She has always been jealous of me, so I wasn't surprised. But I did feel very annoyed that some of my family members always had big mouths and started asking me if I really stole my ideas from my stepsister. It was really unfair because I didn't do anything. My stepsister has always lied to me to make herself look better. To be honest, I've had enough. My mother married my father when we were 16, and we've always hated each other. Because I tried to be friends with her at first, but she never accepted it and always tried to make everything a competition, which annoyed me. Once, she spread rumors in high school that I had seduced her boyfriend after I had been chosen for the cheerleading tryouts. She did this not only to get back at me, but also to cause almost all the girls to hate me and make fun of me with the exception of a few. My stepsister is one of those people. For a long time, I always turned a blind eye to things because I knew she was only doing it to annoy me, and if I reacted strongly, she would win. But this time I couldn't let it go, because I had spent weeks preparing for the wedding, and she couldn't just show up and discredit me after I had gone to so much trouble to make it as perfect as possible. I know it's trivial, but when I found out that she had been telling people that I had stolen her ideas, I decided to call her and tell her what I thought. I told her that she needed to stop saying those things because even though she knew it wasn't true, she still laughed in my face, called me a sore loser and hung up. So I decided to expose her and her husband to our families as liars and cheaters. Her current husband, 30M, was my boyfriend when I was 23. I used to live with my parents and my stepsister, but eventually moved out as I was saving money. It was then that I met my ex-boyfriend at work, and I fell in love with him almost immediately. However, he wanted our relationship to be top secret, and wouldn't even let me tell my friends. In retrospect, this should have raised some warning bells. After 2 months of dating, I decided to bring him home to meet my parents, and apparently my stepsister had also met him. I didn't notice at the time, but she was acting overly flirty and cute around him, but I never thought that my ex-boyfriend would betray me and cheat with her. I think that's when they started texting behind my back, but I had no idea about the spark between them and continued to date him, and after nearly a year of dating I fell more in love with him. I decided to marry him and proposed to him. Although it was very unconventional, I loved him so much that I couldn't wait for him to propose to me, so I took the initiative to ask him to dinner at an upscale restaurant. But in the evening, when I finally brought up the subject, he said he needed time to think about it. I wanted him to break up with me then and there, but he dragged on for 3 months, during which time he continued to cheat on me with my stepsister. I was angry that he had rejected my first marriage proposal, but I stayed with him in the hope that he would eventually change his mind. We eventually broke up, and 3 months after I proposed, he confessed to me that he was in love with my stepsister and wanted to be with her. And as if that wasn't enough, he also told me that she was 3 months pregnant, so in a few weeks she would start showing, which was why they had decided to get married as soon as possible. I had a hysterical row with my stepsister, but our parents intervened and forbade me to talk about it, as they feared a scandal that would damage the family image, as my stepfather was quite popular. I had no choice but to obey them, as I was living with them at the time. They had a small, simple wedding in our backyard, with a few close friends and family, and my stepsister moved in with my ex. I obviously didn't attend the wedding, and spent the week before drinking and eating my way through a cheap motel. A few weeks after the wedding, I decided I had saved enough money to rent my own place and moved out, but it didn't improve my mental health. I fell into a deep depression, eating, drinking, and sleeping all day, and even quit my job because I just didn't want to get up anymore. However, I still had a friend looking after me, and that was my now husband. We had been good friends since high school, but I never saw him as a romantic type, as he had been known as the class clown for weeks after the wedding. I avoided every party my friends threw, and refused to answer any phone calls or text messages. I thought they would forget about me as they got on with their lives, but he didn't. He was the only one who found out from my parents where I was living and showed up at my house. He took care of me for the next few weeks, and even when I was being rude and cold, he never left my side, not even for a second, to help me get back on my feet. He even paid my bills since I was broke after I quit my job. I could have thanked my husband, and I will be forever grateful for everything he did, no matter what. After a few weeks, I did tell him what happened with my ex and my stepsister, and he comforted me, and then we never officially got back together. After a while, he simply moved in with me, and we felt there was no need to mention it again. We even joke about it today, saying that he never even asked me out. But anyway, I felt it was time to let the rest of the family know the truth. I did discuss the plan to come clean with my husband first, and he was very supportive. He said that after everything my stepsister and ex-girlfriend had put me through, it was only fair that I tell everyone the truth. So a few days ago, I invited my family to my house. I was especially careful to use the softest voice when I invited my stepsister, so that she would not suspect anything. She fell for it completely. When everyone had arrived at my house, I first talked about how I had stolen her wedding ideas. I reminded her that, considering the circumstances of her marriage, she had not even had a decent wedding. Some people laughed awkwardly, some looked uncomfortable, and some looked confused, but I continued to remind her that since she accused me of stealing her wedding idea, and making a big deal about it, then I should react even more strongly to what she did to me, because she actually stole my husband, which caused gasps and shocked looks from the guests, especially my parents and ex-boyfriend, whose face turned red. I explained the whole story to the guests, who looked like they were being served a delicious meal on a silver platter, because after I was done, it would become the talk of the town for years to come. There was a moment of silence, no one knew what to say, but then my stepsister got up and stormed out of the house with her husband, and the other guests left in silence. The last to leave were my parents, who looked furious and even had the nerve to demand that I apologize to my stepsister for humiliating her in front of so many people. I told them I would not apologize because she had tried to ruin my life more than once and she fully deserved it. My husband also told them that they had no right to demand an apology from me, because they had never demanded that my stepsister apologize to me, especially considering that what she had done was worse than what I had done. He also accused them of being incompetent parents who had not even cared about me after I had been deceived. This led to an argument between them. So I told them that if they wanted to disrespect me and my husband, they should leave my house. That was 4 days ago. Since then I haven't spoken to anyone. Because I know that my family no longer speaks to my half-sister, and she is being isolated by everyone. She is suffering because she is a social butterfly and can't bear the fact that no one will speak to her anymore. A few hours ago, I received a text message from my mother saying that she hopes I'm happy now because I've ruined my half-sister's life. Because that's what I've always wanted. I mean, whatever happened to my stepsister is fine by me because it seems completely justified to me, but my mother's accusations sting because I thought at least now after all these years she would finally be on my side and support me. Now I feel like an asshole over this whole thing. I don't know how bad it is to be portrayed as the bad guy, so thank you Ida for outing my stepsister to the whole family. Update 1. My mother is still angry about what I did and blames me for ruining her daughter's life. I'm not kidding, she used those words to make me feel guilty. She has been texting me for days, demanding that I tell the rest of the family that I made it all up just to get back at my stepsister because I'm jealous of her. She also told me that my stepsister and her husband are very unhappy with me because of what I did, and that they are considering cutting off contact with me. This is pointless because we don't speak anymore except in public, and we never initiate contact with each other unless it's at family events where we have to be polite to each other. In fact, the only reason she was invited to my wedding was because my mother forced me to invite her, otherwise it would have looked weird. I don't know why my mother thinks I owe her an apology, but I decided to ignore it all. I was upset for a few days that my mother took my stepsister's side, but honestly, I'm used to it. I told my husband what happened, and he thinks the best thing to do now is just ignore her and let it go, which I'm doing. I'm done with him. Updated 2 days ago. It's been 2 days since the last update, and after posting it, I decided to block everyone. It wasn't until then that I realized how much this had affected me, and I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders when I finally cut them out of my life. I couldn't believe it. For so long my mother forced me to pretend to be close to my stepsister just so people wouldn't criticize them for their failure. They were the ones who couldn't make my stepsister a decent human being, yet somehow I suffered for it. But anyway, I blocked them all and I thought that was the end of it. However, last night my mother came over, and she seemed very disappointed. I had nothing to say, and quite frankly, after almost 5 minutes of awkward silence, she started talking to me about how my behavior has negatively affected the family. I interrupted her and said that at least for me, after she married my stepfather, over time she obviously preferred my stepsister more, and everything she did was forgiven, but the same rules do not apply to me at all. I told her how much she had hurt me over the years, and that I would not apologize or play games anymore. I was done. She got very angry after listening to my rant and tried to explain to me that the reason she had distanced herself from me after the divorce was because I was so much like her and so much like my father, which was not fair to me at all, because of course I would remind her of my father, but that was no reason for her to start treating me like just my father's daughter and not her daughter. I told her that while I would try to understand her side of the story, I could not easily forgive her, and that it would take time. But no matter what my relationship with my mother was, I would never apologize to my stepsister, nor pretend to be sorry for what I had done. I let her know that too. She left looking very sad and disappointed, but there was nothing I could do about it. A day had passed since our last conversation, and although I had relieved her of her burden, we had not spoken. Update 3. A week had passed since my last conversation with my mother, and she had not contacted me again, so I guess she did not regret it. To be honest, it did not matter to me. I have accepted the fact that she prefers my stepsister, and that is just the way it is no matter what I say or do. But my stepsister has not yet come to terms with what I did, and has started badmouthing me to our relatives again. She tells everyone that her husband cheated on her because I am a toxic psychopath and he finds peace in her company. Apparently, she also told people that every time my ex-husband wanted to break up, I would emotionally manipulate him into staying with me, and that was one of the reasons why he eventually cheated on me. Another reason was that I forced him to marry me, even though he told me he wasn't ready, and that scared him. Now, obviously none of these things are true, but my relatives don't know who to believe because my stepsister, unlike me, is a very convincing liar. One of my cousins has been reporting back to me on the lies she's been spreading about me, and honestly, it's downright shameless the way she's trying to paint me as a liar. We all know what she's like, and I'm pretty sure my mother won't intervene at all, and I wouldn't ask her to because she wouldn't say a thing to her favorite daughter no matter what, but I'm not going to let this go because if she can be so vile, then I can definitely do worse. I have blocked her accounts on all social media, but luckily I know many of her colleagues and friends, and I want to make sure everyone knows what kind of person my dear stepsister is. She is mean and cruel, and I am so glad that I can finally stop pretending to care about her or her feelings because she never cared about mine. Even my husband thinks that whatever I do, no matter how mean and despicable it seems, it comes from justified anger. I had been forced to suppress my anger and resentment towards my stepsister for so long that sooner or later, it would have exploded in a destructive way. He felt that it was better to explode now than never, because she had been forcing me to react anyway, so I decided that this time I would make public what she had done to me, so that everyone who knew her would know that it was definitely not a good thing. Update 4. I did it. I published everything my stepsister did to me with evidence because I did have some screenshots of text messages between me and my ex-boyfriend, and even some mocking text messages my stepsister sent me over the years to prove I wasn't lying. I posted this information yesterday, and I was surprised by the barrage of notifications on my phone, as many people sent me messages. Not only did my relatives contact me, but my stepsister's colleagues and acquaintances also sent me messages detailing their terrible experiences with her. Apparently, she is an office flirt who flirts with every man, whether they are married or not. As if that wasn't enough, she also treats other women like trash and always speaks badly about their so-called friends behind their backs. So far, I have learned that she is a flirt, a gossip, and a backstabber, and the list is still growing. My stepsister is furious that I have made this information public and has tried to contact me. She has also registered several different accounts to harass me and get me to delete the post, but she doesn't scare me at all, so the post is still there. I'm pretty sure she reported this post too, so maybe Facebook will eventually delete it, but I definitely won't delete it. My mother is also very angry with me. She told me specifically that although she hoped I would handle this like a mature woman, I have disappointed her and acted like a complete idiot. She also told me that my stepfather is very angry because my shenanigans have also affected his reputation among his friends, so he wants me to apologize publicly and delete my posts. If I don't do it, they will also be forced to cut off relations with me, which means that my entire inheritance will go to my stepsister. The funny thing is that they threatened to disown me, but whatever, because I was the one who stopped them first. Obviously, I don't care if my stepfather wants me in his life. I will be a little disappointed when my mother disowns me, but as I said, I have already accepted that she loves me less than her stepdaughter. As for the inheritance, I earn enough to support myself, as does my husband, so we don't worry about money. Besides, when my father died a few years ago, he left me much more money than my stepfather. To be honest, I'm not too worried about losing my inheritance. Update. 2 days after I posted, my God, that article finally opened Pandora's box. First, when I told my mother I wouldn't delete the article, my parents apparently severed their relationship with me. She tried to convince me that losing my parents was not worth it, and that revenge on my stepsister should not be my only motivation. I reminded her that I hardly had any relationship with him anymore, so I didn't care about losing what little I had, if it meant I could get revenge on the devil who caused the quarrel. Eventually she obstructed me everywhere just like I did to her, which hurt, but anyway, yesterday I learned from other relatives that my stepsister and her husband were getting a divorce. I was very confused as to what had changed overnight. After some investigation, I learned from my cousin that apparently one of her male colleagues had seen my post and decided to text her husband. The colleague sent him a number of screenshots showing my stepsister trying to flirt with him. Since he was already married, he was obviously very uncomfortable. My stepsister's husband and they had a huge fight and decided to end their marriage. He filed for divorce and was granted sole custody of their son. It was sad for the children, but to be honest, I was glad that they were finally punished whatever they had done to me. I had obviously distanced myself completely, and I think my stepsister had learned her lesson because she kept quiet after that post. I can't believe that one of my stepsister's decisions has ultimately ruined her marriage and probably her relationship with her son, but I don't feel guilty about it at all. As far as I know, she moved back in with her parents because she's also facing flake at work, and she may have to quit soon because of her behavior. I'm so glad that I won't have to deal with her and her crazy antics for the foreseeable future. And to make sure I stay as far away from her as possible, my husband and I decided to go on our honeymoon this week. We're planning a trip to Europe, and I'm really looking forward to it. In the next few weeks, I'm going to put all this nonsense about my stepsister, parents and family behind me and enjoy life to the fullest. I hope that when I come back, I'll be a better, freer person free of emotional baggage. To be honest, I finally feel a lot more relaxed now that I'm free of my family's constraints.